And this is Sushma. Myself, Sushma Jaiswal. I am from Khelnagar Municipal Secondary English School, Bandra East. So let's do some revision of our previous lesson, that is Introduction to Geography, which we have learned yesterday. Yesterday, Pradnya Madam has taught you very nicely about what is geography and why study of geography is very important. See, geography is a study of earth landscapes, peoples, places, and environments. It is a study of life and living. So it includes not only the environment, places, earth, but also it includes how people live in a particular area. Okay, it also includes a study of landforms. Geography is a study of physical environment as well as the people living in the environment. Now, what is geography? Geography is all about the world in which we live and on which we depend. Landscapes, peoples, places, and the fragile environment are all interwoven. Its unique combination of knowledge gives rise to a clear and incisive understanding of the interconnections of our world, including the human impact on an environment. So, geography is nothing but it is a study of all over the environment, about the people and its impact on the environment. See, this is our content. Our first chapter is field visit. Now, next chapter is local and location and extent. Third, physiography and drainage. And later you will get to know about the remaining lesson. Now, continents of the world. See, our world comprises of 7 continents. That is Asia first, then Europe. You can see here on the map, it is located. See, on the eastern side, you can see is Asia, and then Europe. Asia is the biggest continent, and then Europe, Africa, North America, South America, Australia, Antarctica. You can locate this on the map given here. You can see this is clearly on the map. And now the major oceans of the world, the biggest oceans of the world. The first one is Pacific Ocean. It is the biggest and the deepest ocean. The second one is the Indian Ocean. The third is the Atlantic Ocean. Then Arctic Ocean, and then Southern Ocean. See, you can see here on the map all these oceans. See here. Atlantic Ocean, Indian Ocean, then Pacific Ocean, Atlantic, Arctic Ocean. Okay, all these are oceans. Next, few hints and the flags of 2 countries are given below. See, as our Indian flag is very popular, you can see this by the symbol given here. India is the second largest populated country in the world. The first is China, and India is the second. India is mainly known for its species, raw materials, and in India, cricket is a popular game. In comparison of India, Brazil is commonly known for its coffee pot, and it's famous for samba dance. It is football is a popular game here, means popular sport here. I'm not going deeply about all this. I'm going to start with my lesson. You can see the states of India with its capital. Andhra Pradesh, Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Goa, then Gujarat, Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, Jammu and Kashmir, Jharkhand. The newest made state is Telangana. Before that was Uttarakhand. Uttar Pradesh was divided into Uttarakhand and Hyderabad. Telangana's capital is Hyderabad, and Telangana is the newly formed state of India. Now let's start with the today's topic, that is field visit. Now, before I start with the actual lesson, let's go through about the importance of field visit and why it is important in our life. Field visit, actually it is what? Field visit is a trip which we go out of our classroom to take first-hand experience, to observe the things personally. Now, what is the importance of field visit in our educational life? First point, see, field visit helps in developing geographical concepts, elements, and process through direct personal experience. Through direct personal experience means here you are going to actually experience the things in front of you, the things you are going to actually experience through first hand. By field visit, it helps in developing your geographical concepts like what is topography, what is relief, what is water body, and so many geographical concepts are there which gets clear when you go to a field visit. Now next is, it helps in understanding correlation between the humans and environment. As I told you earlier, before the starting of the lesson, that geography is the study of the humans and its impact on the environment. So here, when you go to a field visit, you actually understand the correlation between the human and the environment and its impact on the environment. Third point is, it makes the study of geography more interesting and supports application of knowledge. How it makes our study more interesting, then when we go out, we actually learn so many things and we get fun also. When we are with our friends, we actually enjoy and we actually share our knowledge with our friends. So it not only helps in making the study more interesting, but also it supports our application of knowledge. Application of knowledge here means whatever we are studying in the textbook, actually we are applying that in our real life. For example, we are learning about kharif and rabi crops. What are kharif and rabi crops? But when we are actually going to a agricultural trip, we are seeing there, we are observing how people are doing this kind of agricultural farming. Okay, so here whatever we are learning in textbook, actually we are applying that in our life. Next point is, it helps in enhancing the understanding and sensitivity about the social, historical, economic, and cultural facts about the selected field. As I told you just before, that when we are going to a field visit, we are learning so many things. See, there is a correlation in every subject. See, if I'm studying science, so generally there is a correlation of history. We are learning about the history of the scientist, how they have invented certain things, right? So here we are learning historical, economic, cultural, and social things about the selected field. When we are going to a social field visit, so what we are learning, how society is formed, how people are living, what is their culture, how people are differentiated on the basis of caste, religion, and all. Okay. And when we are going to a historical field visit, what we are learning, we are learning about the great warriors, how they fought the battle, who won, who were ruling, and for how many years those were ruling. Okay. So this is what the historical field visit. And when we are going for an economic field visit, we are learning about the currencies, right? How the GDP or the economic country. And similarly, like cultural field visit, we are learning about the different cultures of the people, the language, their way of living. Okay. So it helps in enhancing the understanding and also the sensitivity about the social, historical, economic, and cultural facts about the selected field. Now see, as we have learned about what is field visit and what is the importance of field visit, now let's go through the types of field visit. Types of field trip, or you can say types of field visit. The first one is educational field trip. Educational field trip is a trip in which students are taken out of the classroom to get some knowledge, to apply their knowledge directly. Okay, so educational field trip, a teacher is taking a student outside the classroom. Now let's see the definition. A field trip or excursion is a journey taken by a group of people to a place away from the usual environment. Usual environment means when we are studying in a classroom, that is our regular basis studies, right? We are going to the classroom, we are referring to the textbook, and we are getting knowledge what teachers are teaching us, right? We are not getting first-hand experience in the classroom. But in a field trip, it is a journey in which we get in touch with a group of people. In education, field trips are defined as visits to an outside area of the normal classrooms and made by teachers and students for purposes of first-hand observation. First-hand observation means direct observation. Now, school tours can be considered as short-term learning activities, providing students the opportunity to observe their chosen subject outside of a classroom setting, exploring other cultures and customs, getting to the motherland of languages, uncovering Christian nature, and experiencing fascinating local life are striking demonstrations of educational school trips. See, sometimes what happens, teachers are taking students to museums, right? Teachers are taking students to the museums or any kind of zoos to make the students familiar of the historical things, right? So this kind of visit is called as the educational trip. Now, next one is the sightseeing field trip. Now here you can see small children are enjoying the sights teacher has taken them outside the classroom. See, you can see in this picture. Now, sightseeing field trip. Students are definitely eager the most to sightseeing school trips, enchanting them by a myriad of appealing attractions in their wish destinations. Admire well-known attractions, explore historic structures, discover world heritage sites, unwind on spectacular landscapes, and fashion in front of scenic vista are incredible activities that gain huge interest from students and strongly inspire them. So sightseeing field trip is like a small trip where students are taken to a nearby place to show them different kinds of sites, attractive places like beaches, museums, historical places like museums and all. So all these kind of visits are called as sightseeing visit. Now next one is language and cultural educational field trip. Language and educational cultural field trip. Now this for students learning foreign languages, right? Those who are learning in foreign, those who are learning outside India. These field trips are actually designed for them to make them aware of the local languages. For example, an Indian uh, girl or a boy, okay, they are sent to a foreign country from childhood, but he or she doesn't know our local language. So sometimes what happens, they are called in India to get familiar with the local languages. Okay, field trips are very important and very helpful to improve the language and explore the alluring indigenous culture. Join immersive activities, stay at a local homestay, take language lessons, and visit local markets. Enable students to practice the language, get a deeper understanding of local culture and their captivating places of life. So language in cultural educational field trip is useful to develop local languages of the students. Now next is gardening and farming field trip. This gardening and farming field trip is mostly taken by the science teachers. Science teachers take science students, mostly botany students, to gardening and farming field trip to make them aware of the different plants, shrubs, vegetation. Okay, so that they will get a most clear idea about planting of a particular plant. Gardening and farming field trip. This might be an interesting activity. It attracts lots of students' attention thanks to its strangeness to their usual life. Discover specialty farms that grow the normal crop and even irregular crops will surprise curious students. Learn how vegetables are produced, explore and give a try to do traditional farming techniques of local people, leaves memorable experiences for students. So this kind of field trip, gardening and farming field trip is very useful for the students, those who are from science field, those who are learning botany. They get first experience about different kinds of plants and how and what are the different types of traditional farming techniques are. And also to the students, those who are learning from agricultural field, those who are learning agriculture farming. Now next is manufacturing facility field trip. Manufacturing facility field trip means what? Here, students can be guided to any factory where equipment like cars, tools, packaging, or any other things are made. For example, you can say students are taken students those who are doing automobile engineering, okay, or mechanical engineering, or you can say any other factories. They are taken to certain manufacture factories to get first experience about how things are manufactured in the factories. They learn so many things and they get experience about that. Automobile engineering students are taken to the automobile industries, factories, and they were shown how cars are designed, how vehicles are designed, so that students learn through direct experience. The mechanized facilities and assembly lines are interesting for students to learn about the production process, how raw materials are utilized, and how workers use them to make the final product. So all this kind of field trip helps students to understanding at the deepest level. Now next is eco adventure field trip. Now next is eco adventure field trip. Eco adventure field trip helps in discovering the natural world at a highly important perspective in the educational sector. Students can be entertained and refreshed by trekking through untouched natural beauties to inspect local plant life and wildlife animals. This opportunity also adds to local historical factors such as early life remnants. So, eco adventure field trip is a kind of trip in which its students are trekking uh, to the hilly area or to any kind of hill station or trekking areas, mountainous area where they are taught about trekking, about climbing, and also they learn about different. Also they learn about local plant life and wildlife animals. Eco adventure field trip not only entertain students but also gives them the opportunity to learn about local historical factors. Now next is business educational tour. business educational tour, this kind of field trip is actually designed by for the students, those who are learning through commerce field, those who are going to set up a business in future. So take business study trips. In these trips, students will be delighted by bursting financial and business centers. Business study trips helps process business theories in the classroom into life as students explore great commercial organizations. Business field trips gives students the chance to immerse in stimulating and dynamic environments. In this kind of field visit, in this kind of tour, in this kind of business educational tour, students know about different kinds of business. Students actually meet the entrepreneurs. Students visit to an industry and get first-hand experience about that. Okay. So before I actually start the lesson, field visit, see, you should understand some geographical concepts. Geographical concepts are very important to understand because when any teacher teaches you anything, you should know the terms, the definition, and the meaning of certain things. Until and unless you understand all these things, it becomes very difficult for you to actually understand the lesson. So understanding concepts is very important. Okay. So what is geographical concept? Actually, what is term? Why we are using certain terms in any of particular field? Any particular field like English, geography, history, all these are subject, but we are using certain terms to make the lesson more interesting. So why we should understand these terms? For example, I'm giving you uh, you have seen many actresses, they have done many surgeries on their face. Okay. So instead of saying that Sri Devi or Priyanka Chopra, if I want to give an example of Sri Devi, if I'm saying that Sri Devi has done many surgeries includes her nose, okay, face, lips, body. So I'm using a simple term. Instead of saying that she has done many surgeries, I will use a simplest term that Sri Devi has a surgical face. Surgical face here means that she has done many surgeries. So like that, to make a sentence smaller, we are using terms. Okay. So here are many geographical terms which you should understand before the starting of the chapter. Now see here, geography concepts like what is latitude, what is longitude, what is water bodies, what is relief, what is vegetation, what is human settlements, what is topography. You should know all these things. Okay. So let's start. See, what is latitude? You can see here in the diagram, a globe is given. On the top, you can see North Pole, and on the below, you can see South Pole. And both the side, you can see 90 degrees given. Means the pole is divided into 90 degree north and 90 degree south. And to the western side, and in the middle, you can see a line which divides the globe. So the line which divides the globe equally is called as the equator. Okay. To the down part of the equator is called as a south pole, and to the upper part of the equator is called as a north pole. And you can see here the lines. See these lines. These horizontal lines are given. These horizontal lines are imaginary lines, and these lines are called as the latitude. These imaginary lines are shown on the globe to locate any places. Until and unless there is any imaginary line, we are unable to locate any places on the earth. So these imaginary lines helps us to locate any place. For example, if you want to say where is India, you can locate India on the map. Where is Pakistan, you can locate Pakistan on the map. So these imaginary lines helps in locating any places on the globe. So the horizontal lines on the globe is called as a latitude. Now let's see the geographical term. In geography, latitude is geography coordinate that specifies the north-south position of a point on the Earth's surface. Latitude is an angle which ranges from 0 degree at the equator to 90 degree. You can see here 0 degree at the equator. See, this is 0 degree, and from 0 degree to the north you can see 90 degree, and 0 degree to the south again you can see 90 degree. So it locates. So it is an angle which ranges from 0 degree at the equator to 90 degree at the poles. Lines of constant latitude or parallels run east or west. Runs east or west, you can see here. See, runs from east to west, or you can say west to east. Okay, so these are the parallel lines. As circles parallel to the equator. Now next is longitude. Now what is longitude? Longitude are the vertical lines. Lines you can see here. These are the vertical lines on the globe is called as the longitude. These lines. Okay. Now let's see the definition. Longitude is a geographic coordinate that specifies the east-west position of a point on the Earth's surface or the surface of a celestial body. It is an angular measurement usually expressed in degrees and denoted by the Greek letter lambda. Meridians connect points with the same longitude. Hope you have understood till here. Now next is what is water bodies. Water bodies are typically called as a body of water, or water body is any significant accumulation of water generally on a planet's surface. The term most often refers to oceans, seas, and lakes. So accumulation of water doesn't mean that you have accumulated water in a bucket. So accumulation of water in a bucket doesn't called as a water body. Accumulation of water in a huge quantity, in a huge amount, is called as water bodies. For example, oceans, seas, and lakes. Now let's go through our chapter, what is there in the lesson, and accordingly we will start our lesson in the next session. So when I will teach you actually this chapter, I'm going to make you clear the geographical concepts like what is relief, what are the different types of soils and how they are formed, what is vegetation and human settlements. So basically, in this chapter, we are going to learn about Maharashtra. Maharashtra means basically from where the student has started their traveling and the destination point where they are going to reach. So here in this chapter, there is a conversation between the teachers and the students. In this, teacher is guiding the student and the students are taking the first experience by observing different factors. Different factors like they are observing relief, they are observing different kinds of soil, vegetation, agricultural patterns, human settlements. Okay, when they are traveling from Naldur to Alibag. Okay. Now here the conversation is start between the teacher and the students. Teacher is saying, dear students, now we have left Naldur and are on our way to Solapur. We will have our breakfast at Solapur and lunch near Sinhagad, Pune. Now all of you will note down observations in notebooks with reference to these points. So these are the points which students have to observe when they are traveling from particular area. So what are the things they have to observe? They have to observe relief, they have to observe water bodies, vegetation, soil, agriculture patterns, human settlement and settlement patterns. And one more most important things, what students have to do is when they are going out of the classroom for a field visit. Okay. When they are going out of the classroom for a field visit, they have to carry certain things. Certain things like they have to carry binoculars with them, camera, pencil, notebook, map. Okay, all these things are very important for them because they are going to jot down all these things with whatever they are observing. So today I'm not going to start with the lesson because we have left only 3 minutes. So here I finished with our introduction of the chapter. So I request madam to let students unmute themselves so that I can ask them something about whatever I've taught them today. Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, please unmute the students so that I can ask them.
Yes, ma'am. If any have doubts, please raise your hand.
Yes, Afrin Sheikh, what's your doubt, beta?
Unmute
Ask me
yourself, beta.
fast. Unmute yourself.
ज्योमेट्रिकल कंटेंट कितना है बुक में?
Pardon?
बुक में
I can't hear you properly. Say again. Hello.
Hello, teacher.
Yes, what's your name, beta?
Chris Chaurasia.
Yes, Chaurasia, say.
Teacher, what is latitude?
See, latitudes are the horizontal lines on the globe. Horizontal lines जो तेरी line होती है ना, उसको हम बोलते हैं latitude. And longitudes are the vertical lines. सीधी line जो होती है उसको longitude बोलते हैं. और ये जो lines होती है ना, ये actually these are the imaginary lines which are drawn on the globe. Actually में अपने अर्थ पे ऐसे कोई लाइंस नहीं है, ये तुम बात क्लियर करके रखो. Actually we do not have such kinds of lines on the earth. These are the lines made by the scientists to actually locate the places on the earth. See, we have time, right? When we want to meet somebody, what we are referring time to meet somebody. Otherwise we won't be able to meet them on time. So actually this latitude and longitudes are the imaginary lines made to locate places on the earth. Understood?
Yes.
Anyone else? Raise your hand and say quickly. We have 1 minute left with us. Hello? Yes, Maria Sheikh. What's your doubt, beta? Hello. Students, if you don't have any doubts, please don't raise your hand. It creates confusion when you are raising your hands.
Hello, Sarita ma'am. Can you start?
Yes, ma'am. Am I
Okay.
audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good morning, student. Myself, Sarita Yadav from Dharavi Kalakila MPS Secondary School. Welcome you all once again to online education held by MCGM Education Department. Student, to begin with your 10th standard portion, okay, ahead of that, I would like to revise a small topic from the previous standard, which is the human nervous system. Now, you have already studied the topic. Let's revise this topic. Okay, the human nervous system. You know, in our body, different processes go on simultaneously. All these processes need to be efficiently and effectively controlled and coordinated. This is done with the help of two systems. Okay, now you know unicellular animals like amoeba do not have a nervous system. Okay, but multicellular animals like humans, we have a nervous system which responds to the stimuli, and that we are going to study. Okay, the human nervous system, to begin with, it is divided into following three parts. What are the three parts? Central nervous system. Just wait a minute. Central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, and autonomic nervous system. Okay, so these are the three parts of human nervous system. You can see in the concept map also. Once again, I'll revise. I will say human nervous system is divided into three parts: central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, and autonomic nervous system. Now, central nervous system, it comprises of brain and spinal cord, whereas peripheral nervous system, it comprises of cranial nerves and spinal nerves. And autonomic nervous system, it comprises of parasympathetic nerves and sympathetic nerves. Now, let us understand more about all these three systems and all the three parts. To begin with, we will start with central nervous system, or in short, we can call it as CNS. Okay. Now, the central nervous system, it consists of brain and spinal cord. Very important organs. Now, you know, the organization of brain is extremely delicate and highly evolved. In humans, in mammals, the brain is highly evolved. This brain is the main controlling part of the nervous system. Okay, and where it is located? Now you can see in the second picture, it has various cavities. Okay, cranial cavity. You can see at the top, cranial cavity is there. Here on the front side, there is thoracic cavity. Below the thoracic cavity, there is abdominal cavity. And below the abdominal cavity, there is pelvic cavity. Okay, so in human body, various cavities are present. And within these cavities, all the important organs are located. Same way, in cranial cavity, where is the brain located? Located in the cranial cavity. And what about spinal cord? The spinal cord is protected by the vertebral column. You can see at the back side, there is a vertebral cavity, okay, where vertebral column is there. And that vertebral column protects our spinal cord. Okay. So once again, I'll say, what does our central nervous system consist? It consists of brain and spinal cord. Brain is main controlling part of our nervous system. Where is brain located? In cranial cavity. And spinal cord, it is where it is protected by what? It is protected by vertebral column. Okay. To go ahead with the central nervous system. See more details. In the space between the central nervous system and its bony covering, you know, our brain, It is protected by the skull, isn't it? So there is a space between the central nervous system and bony covering, which has protective layers. What are the protective layers we are called as? They are called as meninges. In the picture you can see. Okay, there is this protective layer. Okay, and that protective layer is called as meninges. Got it? So what are meninges? They are the protective layers which protects our central nervous system, which is situated in the space between the delicate central nervous system and bony covering. Then cavities are present in various parts of the brain. Okay, in the second picture you can see there is a picture of brain. Within the brain there are cavities. Okay, there are cavities in the brain. They are called as ventricle. Okay, and in the spinal cord, if you see, there is a long tubular cavity. That long tubular cavity of spinal cord is called central canal. Got it? So remember that these three words, meninges. What are the meninges? Meninges are protective layers. What are ventricles? Ventricles are the cavities present in various parts of the brain. And what is central canal? Central canal is tubular cavity of the spinal cord. Now all these three, okay, ventricles, central canal, and spaces between the meninges, okay, there are space between this all three that is filled with cerebrospinal fluid. Cerebrospinal fluid. In short, we can call it as CSF. Got it? So what is CSF? CSF is cerebrospinal fluid. And where it is present? It is present between the spaces between the meninges, ventricles, and central canal. Got it? Now, what does this cerebrospinal fluid does? What is its function? The function of CSF is to supply nutrients to central nervous system. Okay, as we require food for our body, same way our central nervous system requires nutrients, and that nutrient is provided by cerebrospinal fluid. And the other function is protects it from shock. Our central nervous system many a times get affected due to some injury or some accidents or some shocks. So in order to protect it, that is the function of the CSF, to give protection. Okay, so these are the two functions of cerebrospinal fluid or CSF. What is the first function? To supply nutrients. What is the second function? To protect it from shock. Got it? So this was about central nervous system. Let's go ahead. As we said, our central nervous system consists of brain and spinal cord, isn't it? So let's study more about it in detail. First, we will begin with human brain. Okay, the human brain, the brain of an adult human weighs about 1300 to 1400 grams. Okay, so that is the weight, 1300 to 1400 grams. Secondly, it consists of approximately 100 billion neurons. Okay, now see, our brain, which is such a delicate and small part of our body, it consists how much? Neuron, 100 billion neurons. Okay, what are neurons? Neurons are structural and functional units of nervous system. Okay, what is its function? Its function is to conduct impulses from one place to another in the body. Okay, so it consists how many neurons? Approximately 100 billion neurons. Now see another fun fact. If you see the left side of our brain, okay, the left side of our brain controls, if we talk, the left side of our brain controls the right side of our body, and the right side of our brain controls the left side of the body, vice versa. Okay, brain's left side controls right side of the body, and brain's right side controls left side of the body. Apart from this, the left side of the brain controls our speech and conversation. See, different abilities and activities are controlled by different parts of the brain. Okay, so what is the left side of our brain controls? It controls speech, conversation, writing, logical thinking. Okay, some more abilities if you can see in the picture, left brain functions, analytic thought, logic, language, reasoning, science and maths, written, number skills, and right hand control. All these abilities are controlled by left side of the brain. So what does the right side of the brain does? Is it sitting idle? It is sleeping? No. Okay. It controls artistic abilities. Artistic abilities, see, like art awareness, creativity, imagination, intuition, insight, holistic thoughts, music awareness, 3D forms, and left-hand control. Got it? So the brain's different sides are controlling different abilities. Got it? Next. Now, this was for general information about human brain. Let's talk about structure of brain. Okay. Now the brain consists of different parts. Okay. The first part which we are going to study is cerebrum. Now cerebrum, in the picture you can see where is cerebrum. See here. This entire part is cerebrum. Okay. Now cerebrum is the largest part of our brain. And this cerebrum, it consists of two cerebral hemispheres. These hemispheres are joined with each other with the help of nerve fibers and nerve tracts. Got it? And this cerebrum, it occupies 2/3 of the brain. So whatever the brain size, the 2/3 is occupied by cerebrum. And that is why it is also called as large brain. Got it? Then the surface of cerebrum has deep irregular ridges and grooves, which we called as convolutions. So in the picture itself, you can see here this surface of the cerebrum. There are some ridges, isn't it? You can see some irregular lines. What are those irregular lines in the picture? They are deep irregular ridges and grooves. Okay. Now, what is the name given to them? The name is convolution. Now, what happens? This convolutions increases the surface area of the cerebrum. Now, what happens if the surface area of the cerebrum is increased? Then a large number of nerve cells can be accommodated. Okay. More number of neurons can be accommodated within that surface area. Got it? So this was the first part of the brain, that is cerebrum. What we studied, it is the largest part of our brain. It consists of two cerebral hemispheres. These hemispheres are joined with help of nerve fibers and nerve tracts. And how much space it occupies in the brain? 2/3 of the brain. And that's why it is called as large brain. Large brains commonly called as bada dimag. Okay. Then it has convolutions. Convolutions increases the surface area. Due to that, what happened? Large number of neurons can be accommodated. Okay. This diagram of brain is very important. You have already studied, you have already drawn, you are already aware of it. The second part, see, after cerebrum is, second part is cerebellum. Many times students get confused with the names, okay? The largest part of the brain is cerebrum. Second one is cerebellum, which is the smaller part of the brain situated below the cerebrum. In the picture you can see here, see, this is cerebrum, this is cerebellum, okay? Cerebellum is the smaller part of the brain, which is present where? below the cerebrum at the back of cranial cavity, okay, at the back side. Then how different is its surface? Now, you know, cerebrum surface is deep ridges and grooves, convolutions. But in cerebellum, if you see the picture, you can see these lines, okay? This surface, they are shallow grooves. They are not deep like present in cerebrum, okay? These are shallow grooves instead of deep convolution. So this is cerebellum, second part. Third part we are going to study is medulla oblongata. Now, medulla oblongata, if you see, okay, it is the hindmost part of the brain. Where it is present, see, I'll show. Just wait. Here, okay. This is the hindmost part of the brain. There are two triangular swollen structures called pyramids or pods, okay, which is on the upper side of the medulla oblongata. The medulla oblongata continues downward as spinal cord. You can see in the picture spinal cord, isn't it? So this medulla oblongata, it continues downward as spinal cord. Okay. So these are the three parts which you studied: cerebrum, cerebellum, and medulla oblongata. Okay. Cerebrum is the largest part. Cerebellum is the smaller part, and medulla oblongata, where it is present, it is the hindmost part of the brain. Okay. Next, now see, many times you might have seen or you might have heard an injury to the medulla oblongata can lead to death. Why? Okay. Now see, medulla oblongata, it controls all the involuntary activities and vital activities of our body. Okay, what is involuntary? Involuntary means which is not within our control. Okay, such as, see, what? It controls the beating of heart and the all rhythmic respiratory movements. See, respiration, beating of heart, digestion. This is not within our control, isn't it? These are all involuntary activities which is going on in our body. So suppose if this medulla oblongata gets injured, okay, due to some injury, accidents or anything, if this part is injured, sudden death may take place. Because why? All the involuntary activities will get disturbed or it might get stopped. Got it? So once again, I'll repeat, medulla oblongata, it carries and regulates life-sustaining functions such as breathing, swallowing, heart rate, okay? So medulla oblongata is easily the most important part of the brain. Its functions are involuntary. We would not be able to live without the medulla because of the crucial tasks it is performing, like regulating blood pressure, breathing and all. As part of the brain stem, it also transfers neural messages from brain to spinal cord. That's why it is said medulla oblongata is very important part of our brain. Okay, so that was about all brain. Once again, I'll repeat. Brain, in brain we studied about cerebrum, cerebellum, and medulla oblongata. What was the other part of central nervous system apart from brain? It was spinal cord, isn't it? Now, spinal cord is a part of the central nervous system and it is held within the vertebral column. Already we discussed where is spinal cord. Spinal cord is present within the vertebral column. Vertebral column gives protection to the spinal cord. Now, how is the structure of spinal cord? If you see in the picture, it is slightly thick, okay, at the start. And as it gradually goes down, it gradually tapers towards the end. It starts becoming thinner. Okay. Then at the end, there is a thread-like fibrous structure present. And what it is called? It is called filum terminale. Okay. You can see in this picture. Okay. At the end, see here it is thick. And as it goes down, it becomes taper. And at the end, there is a hair-like or thread-like fiber present. What it is called? It is called filum terminal. Got it? So this was about spinal cord. Now, see, many a time students in your real life or in movies or in serials, you have seen or you have heard about how a drunken person struggles to maintain his body balance, isn't it? An excess of alcohol in the body causes one to lose control over it, isn't it? The drunken person does not have control over his body. Why does this happen? What is the reason behind it? Okay. Now what happens? The alcohol in the drinks, it causes calming effect on cerebrum as well as cerebellum. Okay. Now cerebellum maintains the equilibrium of the body, balance. Equilibrium is balance. Okay. Now when a person drinks an alcohol or some other addictions, what happens? This cerebellum, which is responsible for equilibrium, it gets affected. Now, when alcohol affects the cerebellum, this control of movements and equilibrium of the body is lost. Got it? That is the reason, because alcohol affects cerebrum and cerebellum, losing the control of the movements and equilibrium of the body. And that's why such persons are lying beside the roadside and all, fallen over. Okay. Now that was all about structure. Let's study about brain's different regions and different functions. We have already studied the parts of the brain and parts of central nervous system. See, first one, cerebrum. What is the function of cerebrum? Okay, controls of voluntary movements. Okay, what are voluntary movements? Voluntary movements which we can control according to our own will. Okay, which we have control over. Then functions of concentration, planning, decision-making, memory, intelligence, and intellectual activities, they are all performed by cerebrum. Cerebrum is responsible for that. Secondly, cerebellum. What is the function of cerebellum? As we already discussed, coordination of voluntary movements. Second, maintaining the body balance. Body's balance. Got it? Third, what is the function of medulla oblongata? The medulla oblongata, if you see, what it controls, as we discuss how medulla oblongata is an important part of the brain, because it controls all the involuntary activities like beating of heart, blood circulation, breathing, sneezing, coughing, salivation, etc. Okay. Then what is the function of spinal cord? Spinal cord does the conduction of impulses from skin towards the brain. Okay, impulses, we can call it as signals also. Then secondly, it does conduction of impulses from brain to muscles and glands. And third, it functions as center of coordination of reflex action. We are going to study about reflex action. What is reflex action? Okay, so spinal cord is responsible for reflex action. So in the table, we have studied about the function of different parts of the brain. Okay, now let's see, as we are talking about voluntary and involuntary movements, let's discuss what is the difference between voluntary movement and involuntary movement. See, voluntary movements are according to our own will, which we can control. Okay, involuntary movements, they are not according to our own will. We cannot control, we do not have control over it. Voluntary movements are caused by motor region of the cerebrum, but are controlled by cerebellum. Whereas involuntary movements are caused by medulla oblongata and some part of the midbrain. Thirdly, voluntary movements are under the control of CNS and PNS, that is central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Whereas involuntary movements are under the control of autonomic nervous system. In short, ANS. Some examples of voluntary and involuntary movements I have given. See, voluntary actions means what? Like eating a cake, riding a bicycle, walking, playing the piano, coming to school. These are all voluntary movements which is according to our own will, which we have control over it. Okay. Whereas involuntary actions like heartbeat, breathing, blinking, removing hand from hot object, choking, salivating. Okay. So these are all involuntary actions. We do not have control over it. So this was about brain. We have seen the structure of the brain, different parts of the brain, their functions. Okay. Let's go on to, that was CNS. Now let's begin with PNS, that is peripheral nervous system. Now peripheral nervous system, what it consists? It consists of nerves, neurons, originating from central nervous systems. Got it? See, the neurons or the nerves which are originated in central nervous system, where then they are consisted later on by PNS. This nerve connect the central nervous system. Okay, this nerves connect the central nervous system with all parts of the body. So that is the function of PNS. It connects the nerves from central nervous system to all parts of the body. Got it? Now these nerves, they are of two types. What are the names? Cranial nerves and spinal nerves. Okay. Now cranial, see, by the name we can understand. What are cranial nerves? The nerves which originates from brain. They are called as cranial nerves. Okay. They are now these nerves are associated with various parts in head, thorax and abdomen. And how many cranial nerves are there? 12 pairs. In the picture you can see the 12 pairs of cranial nerves. Whereas spinal nerves, see by the name spinal, you can understand these nerves originate from spinal cord, and that is why they are called as spinal nerves. These nerves are associated with arms, legs, skin, and some other parts of the body. Now, how many pairs are there? 31 pairs of spinal nerves. Okay, so 12 pairs of cranial nerves, 31 pairs of spinal nerves. Don't get confused. That was PNS. Okay. So we have studied about central nervous system, CNS, peripheral nervous system, PNS, and third, autonomic nervous system. Now see, what is autonomic nervous system? This system consists of nerves. Okay. But nerves of what? It consists of nerves of involuntary organs. Involuntary organs means these organs are not within our control. Okay, like heart. Can you control your heart? No. Lungs, stomach, etc. It is not under the control of our will. Okay, so all the nerves of involuntary organs like hearts, lungs, stomach, and other organs, they are included in autonomic nervous system. Got it? So that what are the three parts which we studied? CNS, PNS, and ANS. Next, as I said, when we were studying the function of spinal cord, we heard the name reflex action. Okay, so what is reflex action? See, reflex action means an immediate and involuntary response given to stimulus from the environment is called reflex action. Sometimes we react to incident without any thinking on our part or control over the reaction. This is a response given to a certain stimulus from the surrounding. In such situation, proper control and coordination is achieved even without intervention of the brain. Now, what it means, students? See the example. When a person accidentally touches a hot object, they automatically jerk their hand away without thinking. A reflex does not require any thought input. Okay. Now, what it means? Suppose by mistake you touch a hot object. What is your first reaction? Your first reaction is either you take your hand away, isn't it, from that hot object. Now, when you take your hand away, there is no thinking involved over there. Okay. That means what? It's not like that your message will be passed on to your brain and then the brain will give the required message and then you will take your hands away. So what? It will take much longer time and you might get hurt. Okay. So without thinking, you are taking your hand away. So this is called reflex action. You are reacting to a certain stimulus. Okay. Such action is called as reflex action. Now see the pictures. In the first picture, a friend is pinching his friend. Okay. Whenever someone pinches you, what is your reaction? You either get away, you shout, isn't it? You jerk his hand. Second, a knee jerk. When you tap on the kneecap, your first reaction is you take your knee on the upper direction. Third, something bites you. You try to go away, you shout, you cry. If by mistake you touch a hot object, you take your hand away. So these are all action. These are all examples of reflex action. Okay. Now see, with this picture, we will try to understand what exactly is happening. Now in the first picture, you can see certain numbers are given. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Isn't it? Some questions are asked. See first question. What is happening at 1 and 2? Now, see, if you look at the number 1, what is happening? There is a candle and a finger, the burning flame is touched by the finger, isn't it? That is happening at number 1. At number 2, what has happened? You have taken your hand back. The hand is pulled back instantaneously. The sensory neurons in the fingers have sent the information to the spinal cord about it. The written message has come in a fraction of a second and the hand is pulled back. See what happens when you touch a hot object, your skin, okay, which has sensory neurons, they take the information where? To the spinal cord. It's like a shortcut. Okay, it does not go to the brain. It goes where? To spinal cord. Then the spinal cord gives the return message of taking to the muscles and your muscles contract and you take your hands back. Got it? And all these things happen within a fraction of a second. Now see the second question. Which nerve carries the impulse to the point mark 3? You can see at point mark 3 here. Okay, there's this neuron. Okay, this green color neuron, you can see what it is called. What is happening over there? Okay, in which direction it is conducting the impulse. Now what has happened? The impulse has traveled from where? From skin to spinal cord via sensory neuron. So which neuron it is? Sensory neuron. The afferent sensory neuron is taking the message in direction of spinal cord. Got it? Now what is the nerve shown by 4? Okay, you can see here 4. What it is? The nerve marked 4 is association neuron. What is the name? Association neuron. And what it does? It transfers the impulses from sensory neuron to motor neuron. What is the organ marked as 5? See here. This. What is the name of this organ? This is spinal cord. As you can see, the message is taken from skin to sensory neuron to spinal cord where association neuron is there. Okay, within the spinal cord. Then what is 6? Number 6. Number 6 is motor neuron. What it does? As the impulse is taken to spinal cord, it processes out the response, which is carried by the motor neuron from spinal cord to muscles. Okay. Then at 7, where has the impulse reached? What is its effect? Now see what happens at 7. The response has reached up to the muscles in the forearm. Now what happens then? As the response reaches the muscle cell, rapid contraction has taken place, resulting in rapid withdrawal of the hand away from the flame of a burning candle. Got it? So because of the response which is brought from the spinal cord, the muscles contracts, and because of muscle contraction, we take our hand away from the burning object. Okay, so this is how reflex action takes place. That means here no brain is involved. What is involved? Spinal cord. Got it? I hope it is clear about reflex action. Now, let's discuss about some more questions related to the topic. Okay. Now, students, you know, sometimes while eating, when we are eating very hurriedly, in a hurry manner, we choke, isn't it? Why? What is the reason behind it? Does anyone knows while eating, why we choke? If you know, you can unmute and answer. Otherwise, I'll say. Okay, I will say. See what happens? Choking. Choking means what? जब हम खाना खा रहे हैं और हमें खाना अटक जाता है, isn't it? तो हम choke करने लगते हैं, हमें अटक जाता है, isn't it? तो what? क्यों होता है ऐसा? Now see, choking at the time of eating in a hurry is a reflex action. It is an example of reflex action. Now, what happens in this? See, there is a small flap called epiglottis between the opening of trachea and esophagus. See, food pipe or windpipe, दोनों बगल में ही होते हैं, isn't it? तो वहां पे एक small flap होता है. उस flap cover को क्या कहते हैं? Epiglottis. Now, this flap is present in the pharyngeal region. Whenever food or water enters in the esophagus, the epiglottis closes the opening of trachea tightly. जब भी हम खाना खाते हैं, तो windpipe हमारा close हो जाता है. Okay? क्यों? खाना नहीं जाना चाहिए इसलिए. जिसकी वजह से रॉन्ग एंट्री फूड की वाटर की प्रिवेंट होती है, हमारे विंडपाइप में या ट्रकिया में नहीं जाता है. ओके, बट इफ वी आर swallowing in a hurry, this coordination may be lost. ओके, कभी कभी हम बहुत जल्दी में खाना खाते हैं तो जो कोऑर्डिनेशन होता है वो डिस्टर्ब हो जाता है. तो कभी कभी वो एपिग्लॉटिस पूरी तरह बंद नहीं हो पाता, गलती से खाना या पानी हमारे विंड पाइप में चला जाता है, जिसकी वजह से हमें चोकिंग होने लगती है, कफिंग आने लगता है, खांसी आने लगती है. सो व्हाट हैपेंड, दिस इज अ प्रोटेक्टिव रिफ्लेक्स एक्शन. ओके, ड्यू टू व्हिच द रेस्पिरेटरी पैसेज इज केप्ट free of any food or water. Or by mistake, if small quantity of food enters, what is our reaction? We try to cough it out. Instantly, we cough it loudly so that it can be thrown out of our body from the mouth. Okay, it should be removed from there. Secondly, as we studied, what is the weight of adult human brain? We already studied, isn't it? What is the weight of the adult human brain? 1300 to 1400 grams approximately. Okay, now let us revise some more. Name the following type. Okay, the neuron that performs the function of integration in the nervous system. There is a neuron which performs what? Integrates the various information brought about by neurons, sensory neurons. So that neuron is called as association neuron. Secondly, the part of the brain that occupies 2/3 of the area, what it is called? Cerebrum. Okay, then the thread-like fibrous structure present at the end of the spinal cord, what it is called? Filum terminale. center of coordination of reflex action is spinal cord. And then controlling center of involuntary activities, which is the region that is medulla oblongata. Okay, now students, some fun facts. Very quickly we will go. See, basic unit of nervous system is neuron. Okay, second, brain. It uses about 20% of our energy reserves. Okay, thirdly, brain is constantly working. Even when you are sleeping, your brain is working. Fourth, brain structure is constantly changing. Okay, it is constantly changing. It is not same always. Fifth, involuntary reflexes are not controlled by our brain. They are controlled by reflex arm, that is reflex action. 6C, the fastest signal transmission in the body occurs in alpha motor neuron. And what is the time? What is the C? What is the speed? 268 miles per hour. And the slowest signal transmission is within the skin, 1 mile per hour. Neurons can't divide or replace. Okay, that means what? If nerve damage is there, it is permanent. Then we start losing neurons, okay, as we age, starting at around 20 years. And as we turn by 75, 1/10 of our neurons are gone. These are some fun facts, okay? This is not from the portion, just general information about the nervous system. Then electrical impulses within the nervous systems are triggered, okay, by ions or chemical signals. Then these ions which are responsible for chemical signal, which ions? Sodium, potassium, chloride, calcium. And as we age, our brain shrinks by about 1-2 grams every year, okay, due to loss of neurons. See, it is losing neurons. That's why the brain starts shrinking as we age. Now, primates, including humans, have a group of neurons called mirror neurons. These are responsible for some behaviors being contagious, such as yawning, isn't it? If one yawns, the other person also yawns, okay? And which is the longest nerve in our body? It is the sciatic nerve. It runs from where? From spinal cord to toes, okay? So that is the longest nerve, sciatic nerve. The bowel or digestion and all, that is controlled by separate part of the nervous system known as enteric nervous system. And brain, already we studied, approximately 100. It consists of about 100 billion neurons. In contrast, spinal cords have 13.5 million neurons, okay, throughout its length. And brain is about 85% of water. Got it? This was some of the fun facts related to human nervous system and brain. Students, if you have any doubt, you can ask. Any doubts, students? If you have any doubt, you can ask, students. Only 1 minute is left. You can unmute yourself and ask. Ma'am, can they unmute them?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, students, if you have any doubt, you can ask.
Teacher. Hello, ma'am.
Yes. Do you have any doubt?
मुझे इस क्वेश्चन आंसर भी लिखना है?
No.
No, it was just for a revision, na?
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, what is mean by salivating?
What?
What is mean by salivating?
Cavity. Cavity. Are you saying cavity?
No, ma'am, 1 minute, huh? 1 minute.
हेलो मैम
Yes.
मैम
One by
इसका
one. One by
इसका
one.
अल्कोहल का मतलब क्या है मैम?
See, alcohol is what? You don't know?
Ma'am, involuntary actions में जो last वाला point है ना salivating.
Salivating. Okay, okay. See what happens whenever at home some delicious meal is cooking. Okay, कुछ अच्छा बन रहा होता है तो बिना चखे हमारे मुंह में पानी आने लगता है, isn't it? So that is called salivating, salivation. हमें सिर्फ महक आ जाए या पता चल जाए कि हाँ ये बन रहा है, पनीर बन रहा है, तो हमारे मुंह में पानी आने लगता है. That is called salivating, salivation.
मैम ये जो डायग्राम है ना,
हाँ,
2 डायग्राम के बाजू वाला देखो, ये डार्क ग्रीन येलो थोड़ा ब्लू है ना,
हाँ,
स्पाइनल कॉर्ड का मैम.
हाँ तो हाँ, yes. हाँ बोलो.
समझा? ये वाला डायग्राम समझाओ ना.
See diagram, that is the picture of spinal cord. Got it? Got it? That spinal cord picture is there, and how you have to see in that picture how spinal cord at the start it is thick, but as you go down, जैसे जैसे तुम ऐसे नीचे जाओगे, what happens? Just wait a minute. It starts tapering down. तुम्हें डिटेल में नहीं अभी पढ़ना है, just you have to understand, okay, how different, how your spinal cord is protected by vertebral column. और ये तो this picture is about reflex action में भी तुमने देखा. Okay, so this is about reflex action, and at the end you can see this hair-like structure that is called filum terminal. Any other doubts, students? Ma'am, I think no doubt.
Yes, ma'am. Wind up the lecture.
Thank you, students, for your